You're listening to Underworld on the Ghost Radio Network.
Listen.
Hauntings. The unexplained. Synchronicity. EVP.
So why are you?
I heard that.
Absolutely fascinating.
What are Midnights? Is it real? What do you think?
I love you.
The unseen.
I'm alright.
1111. Who or what are mutilating cattle?
Listen.
Poltergeists. Your stories. Your experiences. Listen close.
Hello everybody, this is Leah Ramses and you're tuning into my show Underworld through the Ghost Radio Network. This is the second last show of the year and what a fabulous year we've had. Tonight we've got a very special guest as always, but a couple of things first to tell you about. I've got a giveaway for you people. Maria Alita is the author of The Miracle. Maria Alita is a psychic life counsellor and Australia's Psychic of the Year. Her fabulous new book, The Miracle, was released a couple of weeks ago, and I have 3 signed copies here to give away to 3 very special listeners. What I'd ask you to do is send me an email of your miracle moment. Let me know when something life-changing and miraculous happened in your life. And 3 of the very best of those are going to receive a signed copy of Maria Alita's book, The Miracle. Send those emails to leah@ghostradio.com.au and get yourself a copy of The Miracle. Let's move on now into our guest. And tonight we're going to talk EVP. I know that's a favourite with a lot of listeners out there. Electronic voice phenomena, or EVP, is that process by which humans who have transitioned the physical plane use the availability of sound and image to communicate again with those of us on this plane through the static and white noise of modern electronic devices. Australia's foremost expert on EVP is Rob Smith. Rob is a former Uniting Church minister and a funeral celebrant. Rob believes his years as a Uniting Church minister and the traumas related to his real life and death experiences and grief and trauma counselling have made him more receptive to contact in the ethereal realms. He's been with us before. Tonight he's back to give us an update of the latest findings in EVP and ITC research. Welcome back to Ghost Radio, Rob Smith.
Thank you very much, Leah. It's a pleasure to be back once again.
Now, I know we discussed this the last time you were on, but you are an EVP magnet. There's no doubt about that. And you do attribute this to your time in the church when your daily life consists of grief counselling and funerals and helping people through the trauma of death. And you believe this seems to have opened a door to the afterlife, don't you?
I do now. Basically, back then I was struggling, I think, to find meaning for people in death and loss and trying to give them something back. And I think I was manufacturing a belief pattern that told me that the memories will sustain people. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't my experience at that point. And it wasn't until I discovered EVP for myself that I started to discover there was a further dimension to death that I'd never been aware of. And I think that's been my awakening, I think, as a person over the last 3 years.
Yeah, it's quite an awakening, and you're really the only person in Australia who's stepped up to the plate that I'm aware of, and whose research, and I mean you've appeared on TV, you've appeared on radio, in print media, and you're really the Australian guy for EVP, aren't you?
I would say I'm the Australian guy. I'm probably no expert. I think we're all very much learners in this sort of field, but I'm not aware of too many other people who are actually pushing themselves out there to talk to others about EVP and instrumental transcommunication and the sort of, I suppose it's a new world medium type images that we're trying to present out there. So, no, there isn't. You're right, Leah. It's a new field, and I keep trying to go quiet, and then I feel a prompt to go out there again. So I think it seems to be my task in life now to continue to promote it. Yeah.
Now, by modern estimates, there are nearly 7 billion audio and video devices in our homes around the world, and every single one of them is a potential portal to the afterlife, isn't it, Rob?
Yes, it is. I mean, I think we're in a world where electromagnetism has probably increased, like 100-fold around the place. We seem to be creating portals between the ethereal or ectoplasmic realms that can interact far more readily with us through the various electromagnetic fields around the place. So, yeah, we seem that the veil is thinner, if I use that language, for communication both ways. And there's even people doing direct voice communication these days where you actually are talking and getting direct responses. So we are progressing slowly and surely into removing the myth of death being our last event.
So, I know you're the EVP guy in Australia, but what type of people are contacting you to say, look, is this an EVP? And where are they getting them from? Mobile phones, from their computers? How is it most happening in people's homes? If they're not physically doing it, if people are just realising that they've, somehow got an EVP, how are they arriving?
Yeah, I think basically people seem to be either hearing messages on phones or actually when they got static on the noise they could probably hear a voice where previously they would not have mentioned that to say, I've got a cross line or something else happening. But I think our rallies and our loved ones, for them it's a way of trying to just get in touch with those people who are on this plane. And it's very much, I think it's an awareness, and I think that we have to learn to listen and not see ourselves as suffering some sort of mental disease or something because we're hearing voices, but basically to look further and to understand there's some rationality behind lots of the voices that we can hear in life. And I think that can be hard to do. I mean, we're struggling to sort of find what is kosher, what isn't, so to speak. So, but that's the struggle of EVP of interpretation. But one thing I like about some of the stuff I've done is that you can objectively verify it with other people. So if I hear something and somebody else doesn't hear it, I start to wonder about my interpretation. Whereas if I play a Class A EVP, other people can say, yeah, I can hear that too. This is what I hear and this is what you hear. So we can tend to corroborate our experience that way.
Because there are the different classes. The Class A, which can be heard by everybody with no problems.
Yep.
And then you've got your Class B, which is open to interpretation.
Absolutely, and you wouldn't take too much weight on some of those, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there's nobody communicating. It just means it's very hard for us to interpret in that situation. And unfortunately, the dynamic of EVP is so fluid that you can actually send a file or someone can replay a file and they can tend to hear a different message at times. And I think that it's just like mediumship, where you've got a person who's actually delivering a message to a certain person. I think EVP can also be used in that mediumistic sort of way to pass a message on to a certain person.
Have you got a good Class A EVP there that you can play for us now?
Yeah, I can play you. Let's have a look here. Most of the ones I've got up tonight are basically human derivative. Let me just see what I can play here. Well, the first, where are we? My grandfather, this was recorded a couple of years ago when he heard that there was an illness in the family, and the strange thing about this, how do I know it's my grandfather? Well, the fact is, it's in his English brogue and it's in his voice that he had when he was on this plane. Mm-hmm. And this was about 13, 14 years after his death. And we weren't recording on IC recorders back then.
Right.
So, interesting. I'll play that, and I'll play it twice, and I'll just give you my interpretation, if I may.
Oh, yep.
That's getting fairly well worn now, but it says, hard luck, I say, Robert. So it's basically his empathising, I think, with the situation in the family at that point.
Right, yeah. That seems to be another... We seem to have made an evolution with EVPs, whereas before they used to be random comments which might not have applied in any given situation.
Yep.
Now we're getting conversations happening, aren't we? We're getting comments interpreted at the right time with meaning, or you ask a question and that question is answered.
Well, that's exactly it, and you're getting to the point where it's becoming. It's relating to our here and now situation, where the comment would make sense to our situation in a particular way. It's not as though they're esoteric comments floating around in space that have just been randomly picked up and received. They are conversational, and they are directly related to our situation, our physical situation, which is pretty mind-boggling, really, when you think about it.
It is, and I feel it's comforting, because if you imagine, I don't know how many times I've kind of said, and you kind of speak out loud, and imagine to your surprise if somebody, replies back to you, well, this is why it happened, or that's what's going on. So you can get a bit of advice and a bit of comfort and draw a bit of inspiration.
Well, and I think, I'm probably quite excited about the possibility for our human life, because more and more it seems to say to me that when you see life as a continuum, and that we're somehow in process as humans or as spirits in a human form here, we start to really radically change the way we interpret our life, in our sense of loving, in our sense of being positive and outreaching to other people, in the sense of accepting ourselves as growing in that particular, growing within ourselves towards a more spiritual, more spiritual integrity than we had before. So, whereas a lot of people say we're in a kindergarten, or that Earth is a kindergarten, I see it very much as we go beyond kindergarten to college on Earth almost. So we can graduate spiritually in many different ways here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that EVP can help us give us that that understanding to help interpret that.
And do you think that the physicality of EVP, the fact that anybody can do it, you don't have to be particularly clairvoyant, you don't... it's an experiment that anybody can try. So do you think the physicality of it gives proof of the afterlife?
I think it gives proof of the fact that, well, for me, it's given proof of the fact that grandparents and my mother, who cannot talk to me anymore in the physical plane, can still talk to me elsewhere. Now, that's freaky, because, in all my understanding and interpretation of science and religion, that's not possible. But when I take it as a pragmatic, empirical thing, I can't deny the fact that these voices are coming through my family's voices and related directly to me, and I can't interpret that any other way. So it's got some... you could argue, well, perhaps it's not your mother or your grandparents coming through, perhaps it's someone else sort of passing a message on. It still doesn't make it any less miraculous that you're getting a message through with that type of comment coming through. I think it's really... if you really internalise it, it does change your way of thinking.
It does. One of my favourite of your EVPs is the Jack Gallows one. Have you got that there?
Jack Horton, that went higher than the gallows.
Yeah.
I have got him here somewhere. I'll see if I can find it out for you here.
That's a Class A to me. I love that one.
That's an amazing statement too, isn't it? It's quite a... Yes, I've got Jack Horton here. Jack Horton went higher than the gallows, and I think it's a wonderful statement to say, although, as we all know, the gallows are quite high above, you stand around and you're raised up high above the populace to be killed, he went higher than where he was killed. It's a terrific statement. Here we go, I'll play it now. Yes, there we go.
I love that EVP because of the double meaning. It's a Class A EVP, you don't need any interpretation for that one. It's very easy to hear. And he was making a statement that I might have been hung, I might have been a bad bugger, but when it came down to it, I went higher.
And it seems to me that he sorted himself out, because I often think when we make the transition, we certainly don't solve our problems of death, we certainly take them with us. And we have to find a way of learning more about ourselves and making the adjustment when we cross over. So I think he's obviously a bit more illuminated in death than he was in life.
And that's a good thing, I think.
Absolutely. It just shows you that it's never too late to get our act together, although I suppose we should do our best in the here and now as much as we're able to anyway.
Yeah. What's the difference between EVP and ITC? Tell us what the difference is.
Electronic voice phenomena is basically the recording of audio signals on any sort of tape recorder, computer, or any other type of recording device. ITC is basically instrumental transcommunication. That's more related to photography, cameras, fixed video looping, where people capture images, etc. A good example of this is a website called itcbridge.com, which is this American just sprang up recently, and I've got the name of the chap here actually. Well worth a look at what he's done there, because he's done an excellent job. Where is his name? Pete Clark, his name is. Yep. And he's a computer analyst or something like that. But he's actually capturing images of afterlife folk in images of water, reflective water, etc., like that, using video loops and stuff. So quite a fascinating study. More and more people, and I think White Noise promoted the interest. I mean, the film, the main service they'd had was actually get people learning about EVP. A lot more people now seem to be taking it seriously and studying it, and you're starting to see evidence around the web, around the world.
White Noise 2, of course, is going to be coming out this year.
Yep.
And do you know what that's about, and is it going to...
I believe it's by a different director, and I don't believe it's anywhere similar to the original White Noise. I think it's just a sequel, basically. So I'm not taking too much weight or credence out of that at this stage. But, I mean, again, if the term White Noise comes out 2 years later, that's terrific. We can still talk about it.
It's true, but there have been other documentaries and feature films made about EVP or White Noise or ITC. Can you tell us a little about them?
Other movies?
Yeah.
Such as, well, there was one called Pulse, actually, that came out. I think it was a Japanese film, a subtitle, went directly onto DVD, so it hasn't been released in mainstream, but that's very similar to images coming through the TV. Again, they've got the Hollywood depiction of evil entity type to it, and obviously they use the fear factor to scare people away from actually understanding the science, I suppose, or the reality behind it all. But that's one film that's been out recently. There's a couple of guys in the States who are actually producing a documentary which will come out this year and next year. One about the skull experiments, which you've probably heard of in England.
Yeah.
One about mediumship, and there's a third one about EVP and ITC coming out the end of 2007, I believe. So that'll all actually come out and probably be shown on the Sci-Fi Channel or something like that.
And they actually use some of your EVP research. And
yes, I was fortunate enough to be asked to send some of my Class A's across so they could actually use them in the documentary. So anything I can do to help the cause, I'm very happy to do so.
Yeah, for sure. Now, can you tell us about the relevance, the quantum relevance between EVP and ITC, what the latest findings are?
Okay, let's have a look. I'd like to just some of the articles agreement that I'd probably like to share with you and the listeners is something that's common to a lot of people doing research at the moment. The first one that we probably basically all agree upon is that there's a greater reality of which the physical sphere is but one aspect. So we're starting to say at least EVP broadens our scope of understanding beyond the physical. So I suppose that's a fairly basic necessity to start with. It starts to tell us also that everything is energy in some form, and everything relates to energy. I mean, I think that we're basically, our consciousness is energy just relating to energy, basically, and that's what we're talking about. So that relates more to the quantum field. Etheric energy is a precursor to electromagnetic energy, but it's not electromagnetic. So we determine that electromagnetic is is the recording function, but the ethereal is where the actual voices are being produced and coming through the electromagnetic field. So we're looking at, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we're not saying that spirit is electrical.
No.
But we're saying the electrical field helps spirit communicate more effectively. So we're both physical and etheric beings, and when our physical lifetime is complete, our physical self returns to the physical world, our environment, dust to dust, ash to ashes, and our etheric self, who we really are, continues to exist in a different aspect of conscious reality. So after our transition from our physical life, we're able to move about in a greater reality depending on the degree to which we've learned to understand the operative paradigms of that reality. Big statement, but what we're saying, our reality is our perception of what life is for us. So when we die, we take our perception of what life is, and we live in that perception until it's helped broadened by others who may be involved in that, or as we come to understand ourselves more so. So spiritual growth is still a continuum, and we don't necessarily arrive in heaven with the angels and the harps straight away. I don't believe. I think we continue our development and our consciousness and our growth slowly but surely in different areas. So we define our heaven or our hell by our conscious state when we arrive. That's all open for discussion, but I think that's a lot of people would be postulating that type of statement.
And all this has been, all this information and this this opinion and this theory has been gathered from the many EVPs that you've collected and the understandings that you've gathered through those EVPs over the years?
Well, I mean, I'll just play another one here. This is one. This is an Aunt Barney who we had. It was a dear friend of ours many years ago. You may have heard that played before. But Aunt Barney was an affectionate name that no one knew her by other than myself and my brother. We named her. That was just like a pet name we gave her. A dear old soul. Then she came through and well, I'll play it and I'll just see what I hear here. Can you hear that coming through?
I heard the something is beautiful.
Aunt Barney has risen, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
So there's a statement, and the fascinating thing, I knew this lady, she was well into her late 80s when I knew her. She's got a very vibrant voice of someone about 35. So we no longer have the impediment of our physical body holding us back. And she's making such a statement, excited statement about, I've risen beyond my physical situation, and it's terrific, it's beautiful, I'm just enjoying my new surroundings. So, I mean, that's a very positive, affirming statement.
It is, and it's definitely, if that was my Aunt Barney, I would be comforted by that.
Absolutely. And I think that what this brings to many people is comfort and hope in any situation. And I think it gives us the resources to be able to deal with life better here, because I think if we see it as our life is just a part of a greater whole, we'd be more likely to deal with our issues and problems here rather than try and get out of the situation. I think that's really helpful for the here and now.
And that was quite a long EVP, actually, because generally they're 3 or 4 words, aren't they?
Yeah, but their words in some sort of make some sort of sense, and a lot of them will use my name, like Robert or Rob or something like that, and say, hello, Robert, it's Viv from Richmond. That was in the local supermarket. I mean, Viv must have been someone shopping there many years ago, or someone who sort of ethereally is still up in the grocers.
Yeah.
And consciously knowing my name and saying, hello, Robert, it's Viv, I've come from Richmond, how are you doing? And that's pretty freaky, because you can't go talking to nothing as you're walking around the supermarket. It was pretty ordinary.
Have you got that one there?
Yes, I have. I've got that one here. Let's have a look. I'll just play it here. There we go. Hello, Robert. It's Viv from Richmond. Again, they seem to go out of their way to make it personal, to show that it's not something floating around as a radio signal, but it's something very much directed to the individual.
And you know what I get a chuckle of is Rob Smith, when he's down at the local Coles or the Woolworths, he's got his recorder in his pocket.
The crazy thing, I was down there one day and I was coming out after doing this recording. There was another recording I got home and played, and someone says, Robert, I haven't got a barcode. And I thought that was hilarious, basically. They were telling me they actually didn't feel like they could get out of the supermarket until they got scanned. So there's still a sense of humour that exists.
Still a sense of humour, absolutely.
So we don't lose that. Again, I mean, and very positive comments, very... another one that I received recently, I was concerned about whether people have spirit guides and have that sort of support, and I believe we all have our guides that support us at different times and are certainly with us. But a recording I got is, I asked who my spirit guide was. What I'll do, I'll play it for, and then I'll tell you my interpretation, because it's pretty hard over the phone for 3,000 kilometres to try and pick it up, but we'll see how we go. Linda, one of my guides. Linda, one of my guides. I got the name Linda, and I asked if Linda is one of my guides. And the comment comes through and says, yes, Robert, a German Jew. So I thought that was fascinating.
Interesting, yeah. Very interesting.
So there's a German Jewish lady called Linda who seems to be part of my group who sort of involved with me in different ways.
And she gives you a way of identifying herself, so you could trace that back perhaps in some way.
Exactly. It also shows us that we have fairly various roles and tasks once we arrive in the next world in some ways, that some of us could be involved in this spiritual guidance business, where we sort of will be helping others, and not only helping others, but helping ourselves in understanding the process more. So it's very much a community-based support. More and more I'm leading to this the deliverance type of thing, because I still feel that we often attract, negative people will attract negative entities, and whether they're aware of them or not, I still think we get weighed down by various things throughout life. I think our attitudes and our perceptions of things make a big difference to whether we are unduly affected by these type of ethereals that hang around. So it's something we haven't really done a lot of work in or studying, and I think it broadens our understanding of psychology more so.
Yes. One of the things, too, that I noticed I was researching EVP this morning is that it's quite an accepted understanding now amongst EVPs around the world that EVPs can be heard in 2 languages, or what do they call it? Polyglot.
Yes, yep, that's right, polyglot.
And in other words, something can come through in one language that we might understand, and yet if, say, a German person was standing in the room, they might hear a completely other message in German that obviously we wouldn't understand because we couldn't speak German, which that's
yep.
pretty intriguing.
And that's what I'm saying before, that often these messages can be very personal, and again, you have to then go back to the human medium type situation where messages are interpreted for a certain person. Because I could send something to my EVP group in America on this the AA EVP site, and they would hear something that could be completely different, but still make a lot of sense to them. So, if you're an entity for a moment, you wanted to communicate, why not use snippets of waveforms and audio files that are already available for interpretation? And when you think about it, if they can manipulate an original no noise to create a voice, you think they could also manipulate a voice to make another voice, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So we can tend to change the dynamic, and they seem to have the ability to change the dynamic in certain situations, which is really, again, it's quite mind-blowing stuff.
And what's the understanding on, I was also reading, I think it was on the AA EVP's website, one lady feels that she was actually got an EVP from her dog.
Yes, from her dog. In the sense of hearing someone speak when a dog barks?
Yeah, her father said, I'm here, Mary, or something, and I'm here with, Gypsy, which was the dog that would died, and then a bark was captured in an EVP, which I thought was extraordinary.
Well, I've captured barks. I've also captured images on a digital phone of a couple of dogs. One of them including a dog I had when I was about 7, living in part of Melbourne. Being a naughty little boy at the time, I was up on the highway and took the dog up, and he got out and got killed. And his name was Mac, and I probably grieved over him for years and probably felt very guilty as I grew up there. But I was sitting in my study one day and taking a picture, trying to do some reflective work on the TV, and I just took a shot of the TV not being switched on, and there in the background, which I have, is a perfect image of a black Labrador with a piece of string around, a rope around his neck, which he had. I didn't have the lead on him, and it was actually sitting on the bed at the back. That
is actually on our webpage. It's one of my favourite pictures.
Oh, that was just... I've never had a large... we have little dogs now, but never had a large black Labrador, and that was just freaky. How this all happened. And,
that is a really interesting... It's one of my favourite ghost pictures, and it's up on the pictures section of Haunted Australia, so I think I just called it Mac the Labrador. So get along and see it, and you can see what Rob's talking about.
It just shows you, I would think, that our pets are with us, and there's still a lot of debate about orbs and what people are seeing in orbs, and I think there still needs to be a lot more work done with orbs and things like that, but I really believe that there are energy... groups that do exist, and our pets do certainly stay around in many ways.
Well, what about if we go one further than that? I was thinking about this today. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Emoto's work with the
water.
The water.
Yes.
And they're saying that whether it be a rock, a tree, or a flower, that they all contain their own energy, and our thoughts affect them. How close, or do you feel that we'll ever be able to EVP trees, rocks, and our favourite crystal?
I think our thoughts, I think you've hit a very valid point, our thoughts create our reality, and I don't think we've given that enough credence in the past. And Dr. Emoto's work, actually, Dean Radin in America, who's done a lot of work, has also reproduced the same results. And that basically says if you have water crystals in a positive environment, you get a very light, far more attractive type crystal than you do with something with a negative image. And I think it's the same with people. We look around, if we're positive and affirming of people, we tend to see a radiance that develops, whereas if we tend to be very negative and down on people, including ourselves at times, we become quite dark and withdrawn and introverted, and I think it's a similar type of thing. So I think it's an intent thing. I mean, if we have the intent to be positive about it, we can change the way we view our world and change the way our world is for us. And I think that's what happens in the afterlife, is that it's all done by thought. It's all done by positive thought and intention. So basically we're in training for that later life now.
Now, I know there's some debate about whether Thomas Edison was creating a machine that he was going to use to capture... I thought there was no debate about it, but when I actually researched it, the Thomas Edison Society says that it's an urban legend, that he never created anything that he was using to capture voices, and yet the theory persists. I know the AEVP sides with the Thomas Edison Society, and they say, look, that they can't find any evidence that Thomas Edison was making this machine.
Sure.
But yet he was well known in, as a lot of Conan Doyle and all those people were back then, to be, immersed in spirituality and trying to understand what was going on in that direction. Do you believe this machine existed, or?
He spent... I mean, there was a lot of development in those early days looking at the phone and that sort of just normal human voice recording functions and stuff like that. Look, I believe he was involved in that. Spiritualists would have seen that as a progression between the mediumistic circles and day, and starting to say that the new devices we have, which are mechanical devices back then, they could start to hear voices on them. Look, I think if people were spiritually attuned to things, they would start to hear things themselves doing that sort of stuff, but it doesn't necessarily mean that other people outside would see that or would understand that. It's very hard to say. I don't know enough about Edison's development of his machine at that point, and I don't think there's enough clear history to tell us really actually what he was doing at the time. Like you, I've met many different interpretations of his research back then.
It was interesting though that when I was searching whether this machine existed or not, I was digging through the internet to try and find out whether it was an urban legend or whether the machine existed or not. What I did come across is a lot of people from about, right back to 1903. A gentleman, I'm going to probably embarrass myself when I try and say his name, Friedrich Jurgensen. He was considered he was considered the father of EVP, and he was EVPing back in about the 1930s. His
late 50s, he was actually involved around about 56, 57.
56 was it? Yeah. So he's actually had a book on it, Voices from the Universe.
Well, he actually was recording bird voices in the forest, and he actually heard his mother speaking to him, my Frederick. Again, I hear animal voices and I get recordings. To me, if any background can be used to communicate. Now, if they happen to be animal noises or a dog barking or a bird chirping or something, they can still be used to record. And it's basically a sort of sound basis for communication to occur. So it doesn't necessarily mean that all the birds are saying good morning as you're going for work each morning, but it does mean that basically the spirit realm is still communicating through the available noise that it has to its, around you at the time in the environment. So that's why a lot of the voices change a lot. You tend to, people say they're pretty scary, you get some strange voices. I don't think the entities change so much, but I think the medium which they use can obviously make it fairly, scary for certain recordings, and yet others it's quite light and breezy. It just depends on the background noise.
And it's extraordinary that it would never have occurred to me that, back then such in-depth research was going on. I read another experiment in 1971 where a controlled experiment was done, and Rodive,
yes,
he taped his voice for 18 minutes in a controlled experiment where no other sounds were made or heard, and over 200 voices were heard, and that was in 1971.
Absolutely. And that's been going on now. We're looking, we've been going on over 100 years for all this, through the whole mechanical, into the electronic era, and it's only now, I think, that globally, as we're shrinking as a planet, becoming far more information available, that we're able to share experiences across the globe. Whereas before we were so isolated in our thought that often people wouldn't poke their heads up in the local community to say anything. So I think we have far more freedom, especially on the web, to present information that previously wouldn't have been shared.
Very true. You've made it when you've got an entry in Wikipedia, and Wikipedia has quite a large entry on EVP.
Yep.
So,
That's right. I mean, EVP, I don't think this is the end-all science. I think this is just one way in our current world of interpreting how spirit is actually relating to us. And I think that's a terrific way for people who would like more objective evidence about the reality of it, rather than someone telling them subjectively about what's happening to them, what their mother or father may be saying to them. Not that I'm not putting down mediums in any way, but I think some people can be very sceptical and obviously want a more objective presentation of the evidence.
Well, I mean, we know what it means to the general person who's EVPing and why they're doing it. They're seeking guidance and comfort and understanding of where their loved ones might have passed.
Yeah.
But if you had a scientist sitting in the room with you now, what would you like to say to him with all the EVP findings and collections and understanding that you've done for the past 6-7 years? How long?
I've been doing it for over 3 years now.
3 years. If you had him here, what would you like him to do with this amassed amount of information?
First of all, I would just like to say, this has been happening to me. Can you give me a scientific understanding, in your current understanding, as to what it is? Please tell me what you feel it could be happening, and then we would probably have to go through the process of dismissing various, what shall I say, understandings until we arrive. I've already done this in some ways. I mean, sharing this with people like Tom and Lisa Butler in the States and people throughout the world. I've shared this with scientists, and basically a lot of them cannot give an interpretation that makes sense in their current scientific minds. So if that's the case, the current scientific paradigm that we've had for many years is virtually null and void, and we really have to start reinterpretation again.
Because
all I would ask anybody is to be open-minded, be sceptical, and only only accept what they feel is true for them, and something that is repeatable and that makes sense.
What's your take on, that what EVP is actually some kind of form of psychokinesis, or you're capturing your own kind of thoughts?
That's the people say you're putting your own thoughts out there. I think we do put. There's a person studying a biologist, Rupert Sheldrake, doing sort of morphic body type thing where we do, like, if we're close to someone, we know what's going on. We can anticipate a phone call in. We can anticipate someone looking at us. About 90% of the population can feel someone's looking at them, and actually when it's happening, although they're not looking at the person. So we have that type of interface between humans, but it seems to be far greater between the spiritual. It's far more, what shall I say? It's far easier for thought to communicate with thought at that level, it seems to me anyway. But I think we can, I think I can give an example of what you're asking me. There was a particular gentleman who was very high in the courts many years ago. When I was in ministry, I actually had the privilege of taking him to the airport, and I had a little old beaten-up Mazda in those days, which I couldn't even remember the colour. I did an EVP recording, and I got this particular person through, and I won't mention his name, for I need to preserve his anonymity in this. And he said, "Rob, I remember you had a failed back left brake light." Now, I hadn't remembered that, or hadn't even thought about that until I actually thought about it after I received the message, and that was the truth, because I actually verified that with someone else who was with me in the car, because I couldn't remember it. That says to me that wasn't an information that I knew of. It was information that had been given to me that made sense that I'd forgotten, and yet had been verified. So I think that type of verification is pretty important.
It is, and my thoughts are it probably happens occasionally, that Dr. Emoto's work would show that what you think is projected. No one's disputing that, and I'm sure occasionally you do probably capture your own thoughts, which might even be an interesting understanding to understand what you are thinking. But I think most of the time EVPs are coming from, as you say, another source to give you information rather than yourself,
Well, I think, again, it's a matter of, you look at Lynn Taggart, I think in London, who's doing a lot of work in the field area, and basically, and her understanding and her scientific friends are supporting the fact that we're basically one big communication area. I mean, the universe is just communication filled. We're basically part of one consciousness, but we are separate entities developing that consciousness, developing our individual trays, but also having access to a common consciousness. So I think that when people start having information about foreseeing things and stuff like that, I don't think it's that, what shall I say, as it's not such a miracle as people think it is, because I think we just basically plug into our broader communication base, and we just share that information. So I think but I think more and more people are starting to do that now.
Yeah.
So we're certainly broadening beyond our five senses, not necessarily having a sixth sense, but certainly having a broader five senses than we've ever had before.
Yeah. What do you want to see happen with EVP next?
I would like to see people adopt the possibility of life transformation in the here and now because of the continuum of life and how it could affect them later on. I would like to see a more positive, loving, caring world as a result of receiving messages from those who we love dearly, who have passed on, and can give us comforting words and encourage us through our current life.
Yeah, I agree. Now, if people want to contact you, Rob, and they've captured their own EVP, or they just want some understanding further on the subject, I know you're very keen to talk to people and get your own Australian kind of chapter of EVP research up and running, you know, because it's pretty hard when it all falls to you, really, doesn't it?
Well, it is. We're looking at developing an Australian Association of Electronic Voice Phenomena, but at this stage we just don't have enough people who are really like to be involved that way. I mean, I think people get fascinated with the material, but just to keep pursuing it and trying to develop it is another thing. But look, I'd be very happy for anybody to contact me with any experience of hearing voices through electronic means or whatever. It's on Rob EVPAU. That's Rob EVPAU at yahoo.com.au. So I'm happy to receive your emails and have a chat to you.
And of course, all of Rob's, or not all of them, but a good selection, particularly of Class A EVPs, are on the Haunted Australia website, which is Ghost Radio's sister site. Rob's got his own section devoted to him up there, so get along and read the articles that Rob's written and have access to some of his EVPs. And
thanks to you guys who've really made it all possible for this to go not only nationally but globally, so I'm so indebted to you. Also to Victor Zammit, who's done a lot of work in looking at, I mean, he's looking at materialisation situations at the moment, but he's been very supportive in promoting also Ghost Radio and Haunted Australia and throughout Australia and throughout the world. So I'm very appreciative of the other people in the field who are offering their support.
Oh, we have to stick together. I mean, Victor's got, I mean, he's the direct voice medium stuff that you were talking about before, weren't you?
Absolutely. The materialising of various people now in circles, so they seem to now be moving into the full physical manifestation and presentation of these entities, which is a step further down the track than we've been, I think.
It's like the spirit world is evolving. I know that sounds ridiculous, but to me, that, like you say, with the EVPs, they're now direct answers to questions. And the one question I was going to ask you before is why, when you ask a question, can you not hear the answer until later? Do you know what I mean? Like, you have to go back and check your recorder. Why can't you hear that and capture it on the recorder at the same time?
Some people can actually do that. That's some of the direct voice response, and there's people in South America that also who have developed that. So you actually have a two-way radio conversation.
Yeah.
You can actually talk with the radio in the background, and the voices will come through on the static noise, speaking directly back to you.
So that's actually happening now, is it?
Absolutely, it's actually happening now. So if you look up DRV, which is the acronym, or direct voice, direct response voice, I think it's DRV, I think it is, direct response voice. And basically there are people actually on the website, you can just look around, there's various people doing that at the moment.
Like I said, it seems to be evolving, doesn't it?
It is evolving. I mean, I think the spirit world was always evolving, but I don't think we were ready to evolve while we were sitting in our own little information comfort zones. But now we're such a global entity and sort of looking for we're looking at larger issues like climate change, everything, which is affecting the whole lot of us. So therefore, obviously, our spirituality would probably have to evolve also to be able to deal with our current situation.
Yeah.
So I think the time is right for this to happen.
I do. And, if you've got any EVPs that you want to share with Rob, he is the expert. Send them along to Rob's email. Of course, there's a guest page, as usual, on the Ghost Radio website where you can just click on through and share your EVPs with Rob. Ask him questions because he's the guy. He'll have all the answers. And it's an absolute pleasure, as usual, Rob, to have you on the program.
Thank you so much, and I'd just like to wish everybody who's ever hearing this a very blessed and safe and happy Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. If not, have happy holidays, and thank you for the opportunity again.
Thanks, Rob. And there you have it, people. That was Rob Smith, Australia's EVP magnate. What he doesn't know about EVPs is just not worth knowing. But now, waiting on the phone, all the way from Louisville, Kentucky, is the lovely Rose Pressey, editor and creator of the Unexplained Paranormal magazine. Welcome back to Ghost Radio, Rose.
Hi, thank you for having me back on.
How's the first year? I know it's not been a full year, but how's the first year of the magazine been? Has it been everything you expected, a lot harder than you expected?
You know, I guess it's been about what I expected, really. It's been hard. It's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad that I started the magazine, and I'm really looking forward to the year coming up because a lot of exciting and fun things are happening, and I really see the magazine growing a lot in the next year.
Because it's quite an accomplishment. I mean, you've always been a writer, and you're a very good writer, but you started the magazine because of your love of the paranormal, and as we found out through Ghost Radio, even though you love something and it's your passion, it's a lot of work, isn't it?
It is a lot of work, and I don't know that everyone realizes that, even, maybe before they get started in it, and then once they start, they're like, wow, this is a lot more work than I thought.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that go into it,
I hear you.
The magazine aspect of it aside.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that. Don't worry. Now, what's coming up in the December issue of Unexplained Paranormal magazine?
Well, in December, we have an article by Marie D. Jones, and it's on UFOs in the zero-point field. So she has written an article for us, and she has a new book that just came out, and it talks just about UFOs and quantum physics, and it's a great article. And I just recently had my first UFO experience.
Oh, do tell.
I did, and I was quite excited and shocked, actually, that it happened, and this was just this past Wednesday. So
Really? So, well, tell us what happened.
I'm into UFOs now. I've seen one, and I'm like, this is exciting.
Well,
I kept telling you I wanted to see one, and everyone else that I could tell, and they kept saying, you better be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Well, now I'm really jealous because for all my love of the paranormal and all my love of investigating everything, unexplained and anomalous, I too have never seen a UFO.
Right.
So,
yeah, and you really, you read so much about it and you hear about it and you research, and then you're thinking, well, why can't I see one?
That's right. I'm saying to John, they don't like me. I've never seen one.
Well, I thought the same thing, and then this past Wednesday, it's just unexpected, out of the blue. My husband and I were just driving down the road, and we were talking about, I don't know, just general things, and I happened to look up, and over to my left, there was something in the sky. It was about a mile away, and it was stationary, and it was a disc saucer shape, the typical, UFO shape, and it was just stationary there in the sky. And I told him, I was like, what is that? Look. And so we're watching it as we drive along, and it's about 2 minutes that I'm watching it, and we came to a red light, and we were going to turn left so that we could maybe drive closer to it, and then it just blinked out and was gone.
Really?
Just instantly gone.
That's...
And I was in, complete shock.
Mm.
I was like, what did I just see? Oh, my gosh, And it had kind of like a haze over it, where it was blurry.
Mm.
And it was completely stationary, so...
Which is something that no normal aircraft can do.
Right, I've never seen anything, a helicopter. It wasn't that. It didn't look like that. I didn't hear any noise. I had rolled down the window, but of course there was traffic. I don't know that I would have heard anything anyway, but it was unlike anything I'd ever seen. And then for it to just be gone like that and disappear.
Well, I hope you rang Peter Davenport, who is the director of the National UFO Reporting Centre there in America. Very good.
Yes, I immediately came home and called.
Good.
Like, oh, guess what?
He collects all this information, and when the government says there's no such thing as UFOs, Peter Davenport stands up there and says, "Well, I don't want to burst your bubble there, but I've had
I beg to differ.
That's right. Yeah."
Well, I did call him immediately, and we had a short conversation, and then we also, after talking about this, I'm going to be doing an interview and an article with him coming up soon. So hopefully, by the springtime, we'll have a nice article on everything he does and that whole operation.
Peter's great.
That should be a nice.
He's really great, and he's really dedicated. And do say hello from Ghost Radio, because
I will, definitely.
he was a very interesting guest and a fabulous person who does a lot of work, which costs him a lot of money. He does most of this off his own bat. I mean, he does get money from speaking and from donations. But as you and I both know, it really comes down to just how much you love it.
Right. There's not a lot of money to be made, but it's just how much you love it and want to do it.
They must have, whoever it was who was in the UFO must have perhaps read the article that you're running this month and was giving it its own personal little kudos, perhaps.
Exactly. Well, maybe they realized if she wants to see us, then maybe we should be seen.
Well done, Rose. I'm so jealous.
I know. Well, maybe if you come over here to the United States and we can hang out for a while and they'll come back.
Maybe that's it. That's where the action is, in the United States.
Who knows?
So what else have we got in the magazine?
Oh, well, let's see. I have an ongoing article. We've just been interviewing women in the paranormal in general, and we have, just articles about women that investigate the paranormal, so that's exciting. And let's see. I'm trying to think of what else is in there. I just printed it, so I should know. But my mind kind of goes blank when I get on the radio. So, Robbie Thomas, and we have a nice article, an update on Robbie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great, and everything that's going on in his life, and the exciting things that are coming up for him. And I always enjoy talking with Robbie. He's great.
I'm going to be on Robbie's show actually this week.
Really, I am too.
Are you?
Yes.
Oh, what? So you're on the Christmas show as well, are you?
Yes.
I'll tell you.
I didn't get to come on, so how exciting.
We're just doing it together, aren't we, really?
Yes. That'll be great.
It will be. Yeah, no, that'll be great. Because I will take this opportunity to thank the Americans embraced Ghost Radio. I don't know whether it's because my husband's American or just, you guys are just, you're so very confident and very sure of what you love. And thank God, because the Americans embraced Ghost Radio straight away. We have a very strong American following and listener base, and I'm very grateful for that. So love, hugs and kisses to all our American listeners.
Well, you have a great show, so it's really hard not to love it, and I'm sure that's why you have so many people following the show.
Why, thank you.
You're welcome.
And what are you doing in Louisville for Christmas?
I'm actually moving.
Are you?
Unfortunately, during the holidays, which I didn't want to do, but that's the way it worked out. So I'm moving, and I sold my home, and we're building a new home, which we haven't even started construction on that yet. So that will be quite some time before it's ready. But in the meantime, I bought an historic home that's supposedly haunted. So
wow.
We will see where that goes.
That's plenty of writing material there.
Yes, I'm hoping to get something out of that. The home was built in 1881, so
fabulous.
I'm excited about moving in, and maybe I'll get a story out of it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Have you done any more ghost hunts since we spoke last?
No, I have a trip planned for Myrtle's Plantation in Louisiana.
Mm-hmm.
And so that should be coming up pretty soon. I have a story that's coming up in January or February, hopefully in the January or February issue, and I can't say what it is. I'm sorry. But I could tell you off air, but I can't say.
Well, Rose, you're just teasing
us.
us.
It'll be a surprise.
Okay.
It should be really big and really good. So.
Well, we'll look forward to that one.
Right. Just keep your eyes and on Unexplained magazine and watch for it.
So you've got bigger and better things planned next year, obviously, for the magazine and taking it to the next level.
Yes, right. We've learned so much in the few months since we've started, and things are really growing, and it's just going to get better.
Well, Rose, I'm really proud of you. You
Thank you.
started this magazine this year, and you, I know how hard it is. I mean, I really do know how hard it is, and you committed to it, and you've got a really good product there. As you know, people's interest and love of the paranormal is huge, so I knew it would be successful. But I'm pleased that you have undertaken all this work to bring us all this exciting stories and adventures and theories from people from all around the world.
Thank you so much. I love it so much, and I can't imagine not doing it now.
Yeah. Well, we're going to catch up with you in January and find out what this huge story is that everybody now wants to know about.
You're great. I can't wait.
All right, Rose, have a really Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too. Thank you so much.
See you in the new year. And that's it, everybody. That's the show for this week. Tune in next week for our very last show of the year. Our guest is going to be Psychic of the Year, Maria Alita, and author of The Miracle. We're going to give away those miracle books for 3 lucky listeners, so don't forget to get your emails in and tell me about your miracle moment when something life-changing happened. And Maria Alita is going to be our very special guest next week for our last show of the year. We're going to break for 2 weeks, and then our first show will come back the 7th of January with a very special guest, the fabulous William Henry, who I'm very excited to have as our guest for the first show of the year next year. But until then, tune in next week with Maria Alita. Thanks, everybody. Bye. This is an original song by Victoria Pratt Keating, which is particularly poignant for all of those who love EVP. Here it is, Disembodied Voices by Victoria Pratt Keating.
Thought I heard disembodied voices on tape. Thought I heard disembodied voices on tape. Message from the other side, message for you. That I heard disembodied voices on tape. That I heard disembodied voices on tape. Message from the other side, message for over again, play it backwards this time. All we want is to touch what is alive. Give us this opportunity. We are only a ghost inside your magnetic head. voices on tape thought I heard. Disembodied voices on tape. What do you think? The answer will be if we ask that question.
Disembodied Voices by Victoria Pratt Keating. Thanks again for joining us tonight on Underworld.